Hello everyone. Let's talk about the work of Charles Darwin. During this lesson, we will learn about Darwin's observations that helped him come up with the natural selection theory during his 5 years voyage with the Beagle ship. So Darwin collected hundreds of specimens and made many observations about the variety of organisms and the ways in which they are adapted to their environments. So during his 5 years voyage, he collected hundreds of samples and specimens, and he put many observations regarding the variety of organisms and the ways in which they are adapted to their environment. Darwin's observations were that organisms tend to produce more offspring than are needed to replace them. So Darwin saw that the organisms are producing offsprings more than needed to compensate for other organisms. For example, a single female salmon can release 5 million eggs per year. Also, a type of giant fungus can produce 40 million spores, which will later develop into giant fungus. So Darwin observed that these organisms are producing high quantities of offsprings. Also, he observed that, despite the overproduction, stable, established populations of organisms tend to remain the same size. So even though there's overreproduction, the population size is staying the same. For example, he observed that the sea was not overflowing with salmons, even though it produces 5 million eggs. So the population is remaining as it is in terms of size. Also, he observed that members of the same species are not identical. So members of the same species, for example humans, are not identical. So these species vary in shape, even though they are of the same species. Darwin made two important deductions from these observations. From the first two observations, which states that organisms tend to over-reproduce, and even though they are over-reproducing, the population size is remaining the same. So he concluded that there's a struggle for existence. Many offspring are produced, yet the population stays the same size. There must be competition for resources, and many must die. So he concluded that there's competition for resources, like food and water. The stronger survives and the weaker dies. From the third observation, he deduced that if some offspring survive whilst others die, those organisms best equipped or best suited to their environment will survive to reproduce. Those less suited will die. This gave rise to the phrase survival of the fittest. So he concluded that some offsprings are surviving and the others are dying. So the ones surviving are capable of adapting to the environment. So they are increasing in number since they are reproducing and competing with other organisms. However, those that are not capable of adapting are dying. So this is referred to the survival of the fittest. So from this deduction, we can say the best suited organisms survive to reproduce. This means that those characteristics that give the organism a better chance of surviving will be passed to the next generation, and the organisms that do not have the characteristics to adapt to the environment will die. So these are the two important deductions from Darwin's observations from his 5 years voyage with Beagle's ship. And these observations helped Darwin to put the natural selection theory